Good evening, and welcome to the Rush. Good evening to one and all joining us internationally in the region and right here in Guyana. My name is Randolph Critchell. I want to say thank you very much for being a part of the program this evening. Welcome into all of those persons joining us from all over the world. The Rush is here, folks, 7 to 8 on a Tuesday and Friday. It is a lovely Friday evening, of course. It is the 19th of November. It is International Men's Day. And we're going to get into all of that. We're going to be unpacking some credible and valid information for the next hour, as we will be joined by Mr. Elson Low, economist and advisor to the office of the leader of the opposition. Of course, we're going to be talking economics, we're going to be talking money, we're going to be talking increases. We want to hear from you this evening. We're going to be talking about a number of other things. So let us know where you're joining us from this evening. As we usually like to start the program, folks, let's unpack.
One time for the bass, alright. Back in the day we used to live Charlotte Street. Just learn to walk and speak. Me woulda grab a bucket, 2 stick of milk in and gone in the yard and beat. Miss Paul used to suck up she teeth. We didn't kick cause the music sweet. You could hear me little voice in Regent Street, but I'm still in the game. On the stage I'm keeping the flame. Used to jump with Leon and Shane. We used to make enough nights in the neighborhood. Get vexed and call over Dwayne. Tell them music run in me vein. Yesterday.
Yes. We're still in the game. Kwesi is there, starting the program off the right way for us here on the Rush again. Welcome to those persons. It's Friday. It is time to talk money. It's time to talk economics on the Rush, as we do on a Friday. Tell a friend that the credible and valid information is about to be unpacked here on the Rush this Friday evening. Let us shout out those persons that usually come very early and share the live stream. Folks, we ask that you share the live stream. That is your price of admission here on the Rush. From Berbice, thank you very much. As you come in, Sophia's in the house already. Virginia's in the house. Thank you very much for tuning in. Los Angeles. Wow, tuning in from Haiti. Wow, all over the world. Welcome and share the live stream, folks. Share the live stream. South Rumville Gardens in the house. Good evening. Good evening, Texas. Mesquite, you're all the way in Texas. Thank you very much for tuning in. As you come in, folks, share the live stream, because we are going to be talking about this 7%, folks. We are going to be talking about this 3.5% essentially. Not 7, 3.5%. Barbados, welcome in. Welcome into the Rush this evening. Good evening to all of you who are tuned in. Let me share a few more places, folks, and we say good evening to those, as we say good evening to those persons who are joining us. Maryland is in the house. Maryland is in the house. Ensure that you are sharing the live stream, folks. We're going to be talking about court cases also. You see Ruel and Mr. Johnson and Mr. Jackson back in the news. We're going to be talking about that. London, Brooklyn, $5 million awarded, folks. As we share a few more places, we say good evening, and welcome to the program. Right? Let me share a few more places so that we can get all of our friends, all of our family and friends. Share in your WhatsApp group, in your Facebook group. Let them know that APNU AFC is on. The Rush is on. Good evening. Let's see where you're joining us from. Right? Gina B on YouTube is saying to shout out my mom, Marva Bruce in New Jersey. Marva, you got a shout out from your daughter. I don't know where she is, but she says to shout you out. Right? Mama Bruce, good evening to you. Good evening to you, and welcome if you're looking at the program. Linden is in the house. Brooklyn, New York in the house. London is in the house. Isla Penitent, BV. Montserrat. Kuru, listening from Golden Grove. Which Golden Grove is this? In Berbice. Brooklyn again. Folks, welcome all of you. We love to have you here in the program. It's such an honor. It is such an honor to be able to bring you credible and valid information, discuss issues and topics that are in the news and affecting our lives, give you a different perspective. And that's what I try to do, folks, because we know there's a lot of news about. Tushin is in the house. Cayman Islands in the house. We know there's a lot of news. There's a whole lot of news coming out of the propaganda PPP also, right? They have their outfits and they push things in your eyeball that they want you to hear and they want you to see. Long Island, right? All of you, welcome. We're going to be talking a bit about the PNCR internal elections also, so stay tuned. You're going to want to stay tuned for that, because at the end of the program, we are going to be talking about the internal race that's going on there for the leader of the PNCR, and we're going to be examining a few things. I'm going to share my perspective. I'm going to share my position this evening. Might surprise you, but I'm going to share my position pretty soon. But let's go, folks. Let's start from the top. Let us start from the top, of course. Let's jump right into it. Of course, we saw the announcement. Right, before we get to that, Miss Carlotta Low is saying shout out to all my children. To all the children. Miss Carlotta is saying good evening. Good evening. Right, let's go, folks. Let us go. What did we see yesterday? We saw an announcement, folks, of 7% increase. And let's start here. This is the news of this was trending yesterday, of course. The Ministry of Finance, through the senior minister responsible for finance in the office of the leader of the president, that's his designation, announced that public servants will be getting 7% retroactive. 7% increase retroactive from the 1st of January 2021, and that money will not be tax-free. It will be taxed. But people may remember that when this PPP administration was installed on August the 2nd, they made no attempt. When they brought that, now we know that the budget that they brought on September the 20th was an illegal one because they didn't follow the procedure. That illegal budget that they brought on September the 20th, it did not include any increase for public servants. It did not include any bonus for any civil servants either. So effectively, the public servants of this country went all of 2020 without an increase or an end-of-year bonus. Now, at the end of 2021, the senior minister with responsibility for finance within the office of the president, a mouthful, comes to the Guyanese people and says to them, we are going to give you 7% retroactive and we're going to tax it. Well, essentially, it is 3.5. And that 3.5 will be broken down even more as we start to discuss today, as we get Mr. Elson Low, who is the economist, to talk to you as to how that 3.5 is even further broken down when you factor in inflation, when you factor in the cost of living. So it is serious. Like my friend Sherrod Duncan would say, things tight. Things have been tight for a while now in the country. And so public servants were given, say, look, y'all take this 7% and y'all shut your mouth. Don't make any noise. Take your 3.5%, 3.5 for last year and 3.5 for this year, call it 7%. When y'all get it, we're going to tax it too. That is essentially what the People's Progressive Party, installed as they are, did to the public servants and civil servants of this country, whom they have no regards for. They do not hold them in any high esteem. They don't care about them. If you put it like the layman would say, they don't care about the public servants. And let me explain this. It is not even a progressive increase where people at a particular salary scale get less of an increase, whilst people of a lower salary scale get more of an increase. They have given 7% across the board. What that means is that the man that's taking home $800,000 a month gets 7% increase. The sweeper cleaner that carrying home minimum wage, $70,000 a month, gets 7% increase. Of course, the man that carrying home $800,000, his 7% is big. What the AP and USC would have been doing over the years they would have been instituting what we call a progressive. As you go up the salary scale, the increase comes down. So people at the low salary bracket would have gotten a 10%. So the sweeper cleaner that carried home minimum wage would have gotten more of an increase than the man, the PS, and the constitutional officers. Those people are holding constitutional office, like GCOM commissioner, like the GCOM chair. All of these people who are taking home millions of dollars when the month comes, they would have gotten less of an increase. So when you do that, you are essentially creating what we call equity. So more of the money is not siphoned off for the people at the top because their increase will be so large. 7% of $800,000 or $1 million. Yes, all of those people have to get 7%. While 7% of the $70,000 is chump change. But no, we are dealing with the People's Progressive Party. A party that doesn't care about the average man. And they have demonstrated this over and over and over. They have stood and they have insulted and they have slapped the average man in their faces every single time. They do not care. And that is the reality. It's as black and white as that. We are dealing with an administration that has little care for the average man. At the same time, folks, at the same time, right? At the same time, cane cutters, sugar workers, money was doled out to the tune of $250,000 tax-free to sugar workers who are already paid severances. I want you to put that in your pipe and smoke it. And for the people who don't understand why we're saying 3.5%, because the public servants received nothing in 2020. So we are dealing with a period of 2 years. After 2 years, you're giving me a 7%. It's basically 3.5 a year. It's simple mathematics. Do it. If you gave me nothing last year, and you come to me now and you give me 7, I can only logically conclude that over the 2-year period, you would have given me 3.5 a year. That's my logical conclusion. If you had given me 5 last year, and you give me 5 this year, 5 and 5 is 10. If we divide that by 2 years, the math is very simple. It's 5 a year. But I'm saying to you folks, those who have ears will hear, their eyes you will see, that this installed regime has little care for the thousands of teachers and other public servants who work hard holding up this bureaucracy. They are the engine. They are the engine. They work in the engine room of this country. Without them, nothing happens. I want you to imagine if the public servants would come out on the streets and decide that they are not working. What would happen in this country? What would happen in this country? Your essential services that you depend on, they are responsible for it. The teachers, the nurses, and all the other public servants who do a thankless job keeping this country running. But you know what this government did? They went and they gave $250,000 to sugar workers who had already gotten monies, tax-free. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. My only hope is that when the polls come wrong again, when it is time for us to vote again, that we are not struck with a case of memory loss. That we are not struck with a case of amnesia. Selective amnesia. You know the type of amnesia that Minister Parag, the Minister of Public Service, had yesterday when she said that the PPP did not promise 50%. That sort of amnesia. I hope our people understand that with the AP and UAFC, you had a government that cared about the average man. This is why salaries were increased. Minimum wages were increased by 77% in 4 years. Because there was a government in place that understood that this idea of trickle-down economics don't work. That if you constantly give money to the businesses, the average man wouldn't suddenly get money in their hands. It wouldn't trickle down fast enough. And so there were policies put in place to ensure that more monies went in the pockets of the public servants. That is what the AP and UAFC was doing. And to borrow a phrase to my friend Sharon, what are these jagabats doing? What are they doing? You better take your 3.5% and shut your mouth. Right? Y'all feel y'all getting big Christmas? Where we give you the retro, we taxing it. But you know who don't care? The person that making 800,000, they're getting the same level of increase as the super cleaner. They don't care because their freezer full this Christmas. You think Ashley Singh cares? Ashley probably going to Dubai for Christmas. You think Jagdio cares? You think Parag cares? All she cares about is lying and tell you that they didn't promise 50%. Folks, let us invite an actual economist. Because you're going to say, Critchlow tell you, Critchlow is no economist. Here to help us discuss and unpack the issues of the day, which happens to be the economy. It happens to be money. Economist and advisor to the office of the leader of the opposition, Mr. Elson Low. Elson, welcome.
Hi, good to be on. Good to be on.
Yes, thank you very much for being a part of the program as usual. It is Friday, and of course, our viewers are always excited to listen to proper things, as the people say, and to give them some sort of perspective, unpack what has happened over the last few days as it relates to the increases that we see. I know there are a lot of numbers that we will talk about. But of course, the minister, the senior minister with responsibility for finance within the ministry or the office of the president, said that we are getting 7% and it's going to be taxed. But what does that mean for the average Guyanese?
Yeah, you're calling a lot of titles there on that individual's job description. But
Yes,
we'll leave that be for now. I always try to give you some of the context to really help viewers to understand what these things really mean. And I think one of the things we need to discuss is the Bureau of Statistics came out earlier this year with a report on prices and how prices had increased in Guyana. We had an inflation rate, general cost of living, or as somebody put it, cost of survival, of 5.4%.
Yep.
And the cost for food was in excess of 14%. That's how much it has increased in the last year. There was some inflation last year as well, a small amount, but still some inflation. So, and I think ordinary Guyanese have been complaining about this all year. We've talked about this. We talked about how, all the girls then want the shallow because shallow was so expensive, during the flood time period. And, we made those types of jokes over the course of the year. But essentially, what it all boils down to is that it's been a very expensive, very difficult year for the average consumer, for the average Guyanese. And as a result, people were really under pressure throughout the entire year. Now, what people were hoping, or at least what it seems that people were really hoping, is that public servants would have received an increase that would have compensated them not only for this inflation, not only for these higher prices, but for the fact that there was no increase last year. So we're looking forward to 2 years worth of increases, really. And I think that's why a lot of people, especially going into the Christmas period, were hoping to get something good coming out of the government. However, this 7% increase, which is taxable, has not at all answered these concerns. And I want to give viewers a real sense of why this, in no way is an increase. Because what is important to understand is that because we've seen these prices go up so much, 5.4%, and then for food, 14%. If you get a 7% increase, that does not mean that you have 7% more money to spend on things because the prices of everything have gone up. And these folks are taxing the 7%. So after they tax it at this 28%, let's use the lower tax level. That takes you down to around 5%, right? So you already shake down to about 5, a little bit over 5%. But your inflation now is more than 5%. You see?
Yep.
So when you make the adjustment for inflation, public servant salaries have actually fallen. And when you look at it over the course of last year where there was no increase, and this year, the sum total of that is that public servant salaries have actually fallen on a real basis in Guyana. So
Yeah.
as much as this 7%, people may say, oh, that that number, we have to understand the context around what's going on. And I think the reason you've seen such an outcry is that average Guyanese have really been suffering from really high prices, and we're hoping for some support from the government to help them to weather this storm. Now,
Yep.
remember, some of this inflation may cool off next year as we finally begin to exit some elements of the pandemic, you know. But for right now, we're experiencing really difficult circumstances. And,
Mm.
it's really callous of the government not to recognize that this is an unusual circumstance on the back of a natural disaster, which is what COVID really is. It's a natural disaster, or it could be termed a natural disaster. And so, as a result of a poor response, we're seeing people really, really cry out. Now,
Yeah.
that's one perspective. But we can also chat about the fact that Guyana is now an oil producer. And I think that is something that has its own impact on this whole story
I,
here.
I want to come to that, Elson, because I saw that the People's Progressive Party, the installed People's Progressive Party, decided to post on their Facebook page an article out of Stabrook, right? That says Guyana now one of the fastest growing countries on the planet. This is the headline. Guyana now one of the fastest growing countries on planet. And owing in no small part, of course, to our the influx of investment and money coming from oil. And we know that the first part of 2021, we would have exported some 40 million barrels of oil. And we have millions of US dollars sitting in an account. And as Guyanese were looking forward for this increase, they were factoring in the fact that, look, we're no poor ass country anymore. We're one of the fastest growing countries on the planet according to the PPP. They've touted how they are, there are some economic savants over the other side that know how to manage and take care of our resources, and we have money. So how do you take that as a Guyanese? The look, I basically get 3.5% on it because you don't give me anything last year. But you're telling us that we're getting all this money and we're fastest growing. How do you square that circle?
Yes, well, the thing about it is, during the period in which public servant wages, we've shown in a real basis in terms of what you can actually buy, has fallen. Guyana has been, which was last year, the fastest growing country in the world. And this year, the fourth fastest growing country in the world. In just that short period of time, Guyana's GDP has gone up by in excess of 50%. Now, what does that mean? It means that the country's total income, the size of the economy, the overall wealth of the country has increased by 50% in a 2 year period. While at the same time, we're actually reducing the salaries of our public servants, which to me is absolutely absurd. And so, really, Guyanese must ask themselves, is this fair? Are we living in a fair society where we're growing incredibly quickly? The country is becoming much, much wealthier, but that wealth is not being distributed to hardworking public servants, who are under difficult times because we're facing the highest inflation, the highest rise in prices in over 10 years. So that really, frames it as a very unfair scenario. But what I would also say is it is important to note what has been going on with the oil price. Because it's not just that we've been producing oil, it is that we've been the big beneficiary of the higher commodity prices. We are now a producer, so we're benefiting from that. And oil started this year at about $51 a barrel. But it spent a lot of the year over $80 a barrel, and it's risen really about 60% over the course of the year. Now, our planning, a lot of the economic planning that went on and the discussions that went on when we first discovered oil was around a long-term price of $40 or $50 a barrel. So this year, we've seen almost the entire year really, oil prices that are higher than our long-term estimates, 60% higher, substantially higher. And as a result, the country has raked in an extra 300, in excess of 300 million US from this higher oil price. We've been able to get that in this country because we're a beneficiary of the higher prices of things like oil. So on the one hand, Guyana is benefiting from this type of commodity inflation, oil and gas, oil being much more expensive. But that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, we're not now redistributing that to help our citizens who are feeling the brunt of these higher prices. And of course, people will feel that when they go to the pump. That's one thing. But they
Yeah.
also feel it in terms of the goods that they purchase, because these things all require fuel to transport them and
Yes.
to produce goods and so on. And so we're suffering from the negatives of this inflation. But the positives, can't get any access to the positives. The positives are locked away. Never mind the fact that it's 60% higher than our long-term plan, would look at it.
Yeah. But let me you know pick up on that and move a little forward, because we're hearing all of these numbers, yes, and we know that the PVP will try their best to present a positive face, but hit yesterday with all of the negative PR that they were getting, because even their own supporters recognize that 7% is an insult. It is really an insult. They decided that they will post a graphic, and a pretty bizarre graphic. And I want to share. Let's look at this graphic. This is what the People's Progressive Party, the installed administration, decided, that they are going to combat their negative PR about their 7% by comparing Guyana with 7 other countries around the world. Selectively, of course. Selectively pick 7 other countries that had lower increases, to compare Guyana's public servants increase with them. What? How do we make sense of this? Does this actually make any sense? Because I want to share my views in terms of what I've been picking up in terms of the public, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. Make it make sense.
Yeah, well, you can't make it make sense. The funny thing, as I've mentioned to you, it is not just that, Guyana is just like any other country in the past few years, same situation. It is that Guyana was the fastest growing country and the fourth fastest growing country in the entire world. You know, we have had a massive increase in the national wealth of the country. The economy is so much bigger. We have Exxon now pumping oil. We're seeing all of these revenues come in. We've had these massive gains. All of the countries that are there have not had these kinds of massive gains. These are not
Yeah.
countries that now began producing oil, that are new economies to the oil and gas industry, that have had a massive boom, like we're having a massive boom. So none of them are really analogous at all to Guyana. These
Yeah.
are countries that are established. Some of them are established oil and gas producers.
Yes.
So what we have to understand really is the context, and the context is the country is growing much more wealthy, but the wealth is not being redistributed in order to ease people's difficult circumstances, as well as to ensure that we have a fairer society.
Yeah.
What is being
Yeah.
is happening is that the wealth is just staying with a small group of people, and the average person is feeling the brunt of that. And so I think that graphic is really laughable, because unless you were asleep and you didn't know that Guyana had oil, I don't think that graphic would convince anybody, that, of its validity.
But but if we continue down that line of comparison, because some keen-eyed persons decided that, what, since you want to compare, let us compare, right? And they would have taken out the percentage increase and put in the the public servants minimum wage in these same countries that the PPP decided that they're going to compare the increases to. And I guess the only 2 countries that are below Guyana is Ghana in terms of the minimum wage in the country, and South Africa in terms of Guyana dollars when you do the conversion. But all of the other countries that they pointed to, their public servants enjoy a livable wage, so to speak, right? a livable wage. I would have been happy if in Guyana our minimum wage was anything close to $200,000. Imagine how our public servants would have been smiling when we add 7% on that the minimum $200,000. But I mean, again, I think in their haste to combat the negative PR that they were getting, there's very, very thoughtless. I don't see how comparing Guyana to some of those well-developed first world countries that public servants enjoy the benefits not only of a higher salary, but the benefits of a higher standard of living and far better amenities and quality of life. I'll let you take
But
the final
again,
thoughts on that.
again, I think what we need to understand is this: the goal of all of this new industry, of this new oil and gas industry, of this new economic activity, really has to be to improve the lives of Guyanese on a basic level, right? That's the basic purpose of it. So when you're going to be comparing us to countries where they haven't seen any kind of big growth and say, this is normal, and then when you're looking at countries with all sorts of different minimum wages, you're making it seem like a $70,000 minimum wage is somehow acceptable and that's where we want to be. While at the same time, the country is massively growing and increasing its wealth. So you mean to tell me that you think that it's okay that we have a low minimum wage while we have a wealthy country? In what world would that be acceptable? We can't have a wealthy country and we have people punishing. That would not be a fair society. And that does not in any way represent the goals that we're trying to move toward. That I don't know what kind of punishment line of thinking that is. And yes.
No, and I would hasten to remind people who are looking that the minimum wage of $70,000 only got there because of the APNU AFC. When the APNU AFC won in 2015, the minimum wage was about $34,000. And in a matter of 3.5 to 4 years, it got to 70. And, to think that these installed people now would want to point to that and say, let's just add a little 7 on it because, given the grand context of oil and all the other things that you're seeing, it's laughable. It's really laughable. Yes, Elson, sorry. I know you're finishing off something.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable. There's also a graphic that compared some teachers' salaries around the world.
Yeah, I want to get that one. I want to get that. I was going to that.
Because yeah. Which just shows, how low our salary scale is, And we spend a lot of time as a developing country with a lot of development difficulties, and as a result, we've had low salaries for some time, right?
Yeah.
But it cannot be.
This is the graphic here.
There you go.
Because they're comparing. The PPP would have opened the floodgates for us to compare. Since they want to compare increases selectively, let us compare. We have a graphic here that shows the yearly gross salary of teachers in those same countries that they selectively put on this graphic. And Guyana is at the bottom of the barrel. We're scraping the bottom. We're bringing up the rear.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
These same countries, some 15 times more. Look at the numbers.
Absolutely. And the thing that's important again to stress is it that we're comfortable with the idea that teachers in Guyana, after an entire year's worth of work, are only making $1.5 million, whereas teachers in the UK are making 15 million. And I want to bring up an analogy here, which I think is quite fitting. We talk a lot about Equatorial Guinea and the way that corruption has really messed up that oil and gas economy. But there's a substantial period when Equatorial Guinea was producing oil, where their per capita GDP, right, the average wealth, if you divide the total wealth by the number of people in the country, right, the average wealth was on par with Spain, on par with developed countries, right? Mm-hmm. But when you look at what people were earning, people on the ground were earning, less than, a dollar a day, $2 a day US. They were in deep poverty because what was going on is that the benefits of the oil and gas industry were not accruing, and the benefits were not accruing to the people who actually needed them. And so you had a huge level of inequality,
Yeah,
and so the idea that they're going to throw up these countries as if this is this is where we should be, rather than looking at where how the country is changing and using that as the standard as to how we should judge progress or the lack of progress, is really ridiculous. We don't want to end up like an Equatorial Guinea, where you have these very low salaries because we've not been raising salaries, and you have huge wealth being generated in the country. That would cause a huge problem with inequality. And I think that public servants are right, and teachers as well, part of that, are right to be really offended by the idea that you can make all this money in this country and not pass the benefits along to the very people that you say that you serve. Or is it that we're just here to serve big corporations and big businesses and the friends of the PUP? Or are we here to serve the average Guyanese? Those teachers, are they only teaching PUP supporters, or are they teaching, are they only teaching coalition supporters, or are they teaching everyone? We can't be treating them, as if they're this unwanted stepchild that we don't want to give them any resources. That's absolutely unacceptable. And if we allow this type of thing to be accepted, then it is very easy to imagine how we can find ourselves like Equatorial Guinea, with a high average, the average income in the country is high on a mathematical sense, but people in the country are incredibly poor. And one of the things I keep stressing is, if the oil and gas economy is mismanaged, if there's rampant corruption, if we do not share these resources effectively, we can have standards of living in the country go down. We can have conditions get worse. And what did I just point out? I pointed out that since we started producing oil, public servants have had a reduction in how much they can actually purchase, their real salary, when you look at how much prices have gone up. And so they are indeed worse off than they were before we started pumping oil. And so we've said, if you don't manage the country properly, this is something that can happen and has happened in other countries that are poorly managed. And so said, so done.
yeah. Elson, let us quickly segue into, and I agree with those points, especially this idea of income inequality and the wealth gap, and the problems, the social problems that come out of that. People have, I don't think we're ready, we're not ready. We don't understand when the haves continue to get and the have nots are not getting.
I drop you something that I think you might find interesting. This year, and people can go and look at this, Guyana is in the top 10 countries in the world for crime, Top 10.
Wow.
So as much
Wow.
as this is the fourth fastest growing economy, everything should be rosy. We're in the top 10 in the world for crime. And people can look this up. This information is out there. And so we're definitely going to see these types of social ills if we do not have a more equal society.
Yeah, but that can't be right. The president said that we don't really have crime. Crime is on the decrease, and as probably it's only Saturday night is got crime. I thought that that's what the president and the police force said. And you can't. We are in the top 10. You're lying to me, man. No, man. Something is wrong. You mean that our president is telling us something that is not true? No, 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 no.
Well, that's what I find to be so entertaining, is that the idea that you can bandy around, if you stay home on Saturday, everything will be fine. You can bandy that around while you're in the top 10 in the whole world for crime. At no point in Guyana's history would it be acceptable for Guyana to be in the top 10 in the world for crime. There's a lot of countries out there. How are we find ourselves in the top 10 in the world for crime? I mean, that is totally unacceptable. And in the context of a rapidly growing country where we're having such a poor performance, it really, it's worrisome, because it gives you an indication of what the future will be like if we don't manage the country properly.
I am still surprised because the president came with his piece of paper. He was on the TV. He said, look, this is Saturday night is when is the high, you know, crime time. We ain't got real, Guyana ain't got crime, but we in the top 10. I really want to know who the PVP feel is fooling. And I say that flippantly, but it's a very serious question because, you know, I saw a picture. I want to share this picture. You know, I saw a new word of the day, parag, right? Right? To make untrue statements with intent to deceive. I say this because this was the minister that went on the television in Guyana and said that the PBP did not promise. Let me put back the picture. Minister of Public Service. We're talking about the fact that the president comes and tells us that the crime is on the decline, whilst we're in the top 10 for crime in the world. Then the minister comes and says, we didn't promise no 50%. It wasn't me. It was a Shaggy. She pulled a Shaggy. Right? And so, you know, this blatant in your face sort of, look, what you're seeing is not what you're seeing. When all of Guyana saw the posters on the post, all around the country it was posted. So apparently somebody was putting it up on behalf of the PVP and it wasn't them. To the extent that news reports would have said that the PVP has promised in their tenure to increase public servants' salary by 50%. News reports said it. And they didn't bother to correct it, apparently because they didn't say it. But yes, we have this blatant attempt to tell you what you're seeing is not true. Right? I think the PVP is trying a highfalutin, elevated form of what the psychologists call it. Can't remember the term. I can't
It's
remember
gaslighting. It's called gaslighting. It's when you tell people that it didn't happen when it clearly did happen. But you know, it's actually quite hilarious, and I think the reaction, apart from really fury and annoyance, was laughter yesterday, because I think it was difficult for anybody to take the PvP seriously yesterday. You know, I think even I saw PvP supporters, people I know to be staunch supporters, making jokes, making memes, laughing at this thing, ridiculing them. You know, I was like, yeah, they're really have irritated the whole of Guyana. Right now I'm looking at, and this is something that, you know, not a coalition person put this together. I'm looking at 4 separate articles here. Actually, there's 5 separate articles and videos where it is mentioned, where it is reported that the PvP campaign promise was 50% raise for public servants. We have Stabrook News that put that out. We have Kaichor News that put it out. We have Newsroom that put that out on more than one occasion. We have a video from the DPI where they're stating this as well as a campaign progress. And I myself saw those same posters up around the campaign time. I also have seen people who are staunch, you know, seem to be PvP supporters, saying that they saw those things up there as well. And so the idea you can just pretend that it didn't happen is really hilarious. It makes it hard to take them seriously. But the second part of this, which is, you know, is not good at all, is that it really is a trend for the PvP where they think that, you know, they can just tell people anything and make it whatever it is they want it to be. Because you'll recall that the president did say there's no extrajudicial killings that ever happened in Guyana, despite the fact that there's a U.S. embassy report on this that details this, and there's widely documented evidence about this over a prolonged period of time, right? So apparently that didn't happen. Now you're hearing, oh, crime, all is well with crime. Meanwhile, we're in the top 10 for crime in the country, in the world. And so, you know, that's the idea. They can just say whatever, and people will believe. Never mind the fact that Guyanese are experiencing the real negative effects, the real consequences of these types of things on a daily basis. So I think that what has happened to PvP is that even their own supporters now don't take them seriously in the same way. I think it was a fundamental blunder on their part.
You can't take anybody serious who promised, put it up on the post, and then now they come and tell you, look, what you saw wasn't true. It wasn't. No. If we just erase that, we should just forget that we saw these things during the campaign. Right. Let's move on quickly. I want to open the phone lines, and I want to have you stay on because I have one other um, topic I want to cover. But I want to give our viewers an opportunity to call in. I want to hear what the average man feels about this 7%, this 7, or what we may say 3.5%. So I want to give our viewers an opportunity to call in and have their say. We have about 10 more minutes before we have to make way for the ring with Chair Duncan. I think Miss Aubrey Norton is on tonight. And after we take a few calls, I'll wrap up with the PNCR Congress, the upcoming Congress, and I want to have that conversation with you, Elson. But let's give our viewers an opportunity in our segment. Have your say. Right, so we are back, and it's time for you to have your say on the rush. Have your say. The number is 618-7321. We're speaking today, of course, with economist and advisor to the leader of the opposition, Mr. Elson Low, on economic matters. But we see that we have a caller right away. Caller, you're on the line. Welcome to the rush. Have your say.
Good evening, Randy. I was hoping we had a Have Your Say segment.
Okay.
I wanted to share something with you. Good evening to the viewers. Good evening to your guests as well. So this afternoon, I was downtown and I overheard a conversation in passing with two young women. They were talking about the fact that you always know when public servants get paid. The bank line always full. And, they went on to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And I continued along my way, and I was thinking, they're right. It's true. That speaks a lot. That speaks volumes. Mm-hmm. It shows that everyone is working just to get a salary so they can afford to work and live. So there's no one that, they're able to save or put up money and so on. It's almost as if we're living hand to mouth.
Yeah, paycheck to paycheck.
Paycheck to paycheck. And then this insult of a 7%. Yeah. The reason it has become so many memes overnight is because it is so ridiculous. We could do nothing but laugh at it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's really sad. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
Happy 7-9.
You have to keep fighting. Thank you very much for your contribution, caller. Yes, Elson, the caller spoke there about the fact that public servants are living paycheck. Some of them, the paycheck don't even do until the next payday.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, someone said today that it's not a minimum wage; it's a survival wage. You're barely holding on. Survival wage, that's what we gotta call it. You can barely make it, and in a year where we're having the highest rise in prices in over 10 years, you're not gonna offer the proper support to people. The highest rise in prices in over 10 years. I mean, it's totally unacceptable, and really it's poor people who are feel the brunt of this the most, because they don't have investments or property necessarily that they're gonna make him money as well. No, they're living hand to mouth, as your caller said. So they are barely swimming.
All right, we have another caller. Caller, good evening. You're in the rush. Have your say this evening.
Hello, good night.
Good night to you, sir.
Good night to you and to all your viewers.
Yeah.
I just have one thing to say. This government, I pass public servants and pass guys in the whole. Have a pleasant night.
All right. Sentiments shared by many people that the government ice pass. Man was short and to the point. The government ice pass people. The ice pass public servants, the ice pass Guyanese. Have your say. We have a few more minutes. We have about 4 more minutes before we can end this segment. Take about 2 more calls. That's a quick open the phone line so we can hear what are your views on this 7%. What are your thoughts? How do you feel about it? Give us your thoughts, because you know what I saw today, Elson, that the government on their PR drive to go to the average people, the man in the street, and ask them, and of course they're only going to share with you the people who say, there's an increase, and you got accept and bless, And so that is what we have pumping on NCN and DPI now. A few people in the streets that they got some favorable responses from, but they're not listening. If they go on their own Facebook page, they will see what their supporters feel about this 7%. Right? So give us a call 618-7321, 618-7321, and you can have your sales. We chat here with Elson Low, and we are going to be wrapping up the program in just a few.
One of the other things I think is interesting is this, man. So they've walked back this 50%. They're trying to say that this 50% was never in the plans. But does that mean that over the course of how many years, let's suppose it's 5 years, that they don't intend to reach the 50% mark?
I don't know.
I don't know. Because it's not some crazy level. The economy between last year, this year, and next year, the economy will double, right? That's how much oil is being produced. And we are going to be the largest oil producer, I think, in South America at that point, or at least larger than Venezuela at that point. So we're having a huge increase in wealth. And within that 5-year period, you don't mean to give people 50% increase? I mean, it's not even like it's some outrageous number. That's what's hilarious.
This is why I found it funny, because instead of coming and saying to the Guyanese people, well, we didn't say that. It would have been very easy to come and say, listen, we intend to give you 50%, and that is what we meant, but we can't give it all at once. We are going to start with 7 now. As the economy grows, we will give you 15 next year, and you might get a 20 the other year. But don't come and tell us that you didn't. Come and say it was so easy. I don't know who is in charge of the PR response, but it was piss poor yesterday. They're just digging holes to themselves. Caller, good evening. You're in the rush.
Hello, and your guest. As the last caller said it, I pass, but some people might go further and say that I pass is last pass. I think what should be done is that the public servants' pay should be ring-fenced and be given in line with inflation, and the bonuses paid when they are due.
Yeah.
So that at least they would not sort of fall behind in the wage structure.
Yeah.
And there should be a level playing field for all workers, irrespective of who they are, and they should be able to sort of do that, and the public would see that a fair measure of wage increases throughout the country.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you.
I'm not an economist, but that's what my common sense tells me, as they do in the UK.
All right.
Good night and all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. Caller there sharing his views, his opinion on how they can go about it. As we wrap up, and we'll take that as our last caller. Elson, let's shift gears a little bit, and we know that the PNC they're having their 21st biannual delegates Congress coming up. I see. I must say congratulations. I see you were nominated for the position of treasurer, I believe. Am I correct? Right, yes. I saw my name as being nominated for the position of one of the vice chairs. Very surprised, I must say. I had no idea. But again, the campaign is on, and I keep saying to people, get accustomed to it. Get accustomed to this public campaign, and I am very happy that the candidate that will end up as the leader of the PNCR would have faced some amount of public scrutiny and interrogation. I don't want our leader to be chosen behind closed doors. And so get accustomed to this, folks. Get accustomed. I know it is very jarring to some people that, you're airing the dirty linen. But at the end of the day, we would know that the person who is there, we would have interrogated them publicly. And we would have taken all of what we need to take out of the closet, so we don't have any surprises. So again, it might be an unpopular position, but I believe that an open, democratic, and transparent process like this can only augur well for the PNCR. Your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the immediate things that comes to mind is, would the current president have been able to win a proper primary against the likes of Anil Nandalal and Frank Anthony and so on?
Yeah.
That I think is very much unclear because there were some serious concerns about his level of support during that whole debacle. He also had a challenge from I think it was Ramson had challenged him as well. So what we're seeing right now is a really open campaigning from the PNC where everyone can get a sense of what is going on, and I think that is really laudable as a result.
Yeah.
I would say congrats on being nominated for a vice chair position. I was, as I mentioned previously on this show, I'm making a run for the central executive of the party. But I've also been nominated for treasurer, and I have a robust financial background, having worked at Goldman Sachs and Co, the investment bank, having worked at the State Asset Recovery Agency, where we dealt with financial matters, financial investigation. But also, I've spoken to all of the leadership candidates. I provided them with fundraising plans for the party going forward that are very robust. Plans which should allow us to raise more funds than we've ever raised before. And I'm really speaking to various groups around the country because one of the things I always try to do is to ensure that whatever it is that I'm trying to put forward, whatever ideas are broadly accepted amongst party members. We can ventilate these issues, discuss them, and as a result, people really buy into them, and we can work as a team. I think that there's a lot of criticism we hear about not leadership not being as grassroots as it should be, and not having that connection to supporters. So I've tried to really bring that, and that's something that I'll bring to the central executive. The as much as their ideas and research that I've got out of my experience, at an investment bank and at Sarah, which is considerable research, that has allowed me to really inform the leader of the opposition and all of the contenders for leadership. I do also think it's important to reach out to membership to get them to buy into all of these ideas. And that's something I'll continue to do. Even as
Yeah.
the economic advisor to the leader of the opposition, I've set up an economic advisory team and I speak with them from time to time on issues where I may not know the best solution or the best ideas are. Because I think it's important for us to be collaborative. I think we have to work together in order to move this party forward. And so, I'm really looking to introduce some reforms across the party that I think will really add to the overall strength of the party, as well as make us much more competitive in all elections going forward. The charge is too often leveled at the PNC that we're not financially savvy, we don't know about money. Those types of stereotypes are hurled at the PNC. What we need to do is to ensure there are structures in place so that people are not coming to us with that type of nonsensical statement, and so that
Yeah.
we always are in a good financial position. So I as a member of the central exec, I'll be pushing these things 100%. But as treasurer, I think I'd be in a good position to really carry out these reforms and ensure the party is always on stable footing. And
Thank
I
you.
think it's also important for us to take seriously that it's not fun and jokes time when it comes to raising money in the party anymore, because the PVP is able to steal tremendous amounts coming out of this oil money. So unless
Yeah.
we are much better organized and prepared, we're gonna be in it's gonna be much more difficult than people realize. So
Sir,
as much as we might have we need to think deeply about this, and we need to try and rely on people who have plans in place.
and I'm happy that you said that, and that's a conversation for another program because I want, I have my own views on the candidates running for leadership, and I believe that the ability to garner resources and put this party on a sound financial footing is a key element. This is one of my issues that I'm voting on, and we'll save that conversation for another show when we'll kind of break down the candidates. But I was happy, sorry, to have you on the program this evening to unpack some of the financial issues. Congratulations again on your nomination. As we both are nominated for positions in the party, I say thank you to our viewers. Again, thank you, Elson, for being a part of the show. See you again next Friday.
And as always, thank you for having me on.
Right. Great. Folks, Elson Low there, financial advisor to the office and leader of the opposition, and a young economist. Folks, we're going to take our leave now. We're a bit over time. We're into Sherrod's time. We're getting ready to hand you over to Sherrod Duncan in the ring. My name is Randolph Critchell. I want to say thank you very much for watching the program this evening. We hope that we gave you some food for thought and we help you unpack some of the issues of the day. As I always say, let's continue to work together for national development and stay safe, folks. Stay safe.
One time for the bass, alright. Back in the day we used to live Charlotte Street. Just learn to walk and speak. Me woulda grab a bucket, 2 stick of milk in and gone in the yard and beat. Miss Paul used to suck up she teeth. We didn't kick cause the music sweet. You could hear me little voice in Regent Street, but I'm still in the game. On the stage I'm keeping the flame. Use the jam with Leon and Shane. We used to make enough noise in the neighborhood. Get vexed and call over Dwayne. Tell them music running me vein. Yesterday